reminder, this is meant to be an introductory type workshop. So hopefully you guys have some some experience, some not. I'm making no assumptions about your level of knowledge or experience. So I'm not trying to bore anyone. You may be aware of some of this stuff, but maybe not. I put up my blog address because I'm putting an article up on my blog this afternoon that will have links to all the articles, the reports, the items, and so forth that I talk about in the presentation. So there's not any URLs in my presentation, but I put everything up on this article that's going to go live this afternoon, as well as a few things I'm probably not going to have a chance to talk about. So just thought I'd make it easier for everyone. Just a minor disclaimer, I do talk about a lot of companies and products. I have no connection to them. I'm not getting any money from them. Wish I was, but I'm not. And a little background about myself, I actually come from a Unix sysadmin, later Windows admin background, then I got into security consulting. I've been kind of playing around and taking a look at IoT and mobile security because it's more of an interest, or if you will, kind of a hobby. It's not my job, unfortunately. Though it might be neat if it was, but it is what it is. Internet of Things. I think most people understand what the Internet of Things is. Kind of just in a nutshell, the way I would describe it is, we've taken all these devices that we have in our regular everyday life. We decided to make them smart, make them programmable, and then someone got the brilliant idea of, hey, let's hook these up to the network in some manner. Whether that network is Ethernet, which is kind of rare, but typically Wi-Fi, but also things such as RFID, NFC, like our badges here, Bluetooth, and so forth. So these devices can be controlled or send information and so forth. This chart I kind of like because it shows the wide variety of what is in the Internet of Things. But I think there's some things that maybe some people aren't fully aware of. There's things like security and surveillance, security cameras, to the point where now, of course, people have them in their homes. You can go to like Costco and pick up your own security camera system. Energy consumption is kind of weird. There's actually an article that popped up recently that Google is now using the Internet of Things to save on energy costs in their data centers. So that's kind of an interesting thing that they're doing. Agriculture automation. You may not realize all these agricultural machines are fully automated. They have GPS and so forth. They could basically have them be automated and just go around because of the Internet of Things. Cars and vehicles. We have like chips now in our pets. It's fun. And so this is, telemedicine is another thing now that we're hearing about. Not just these robots to do surgery that people can control remotely, but things such as medical devices that we would attach to ourselves that would give us drugs that maybe someone could take control over, which could be really scary. This is something I grabbed, and there's various versions of this with different numbers from different people. But this is 2012, which is supposed to be like 5 years away. But they talk about billions and billions of people connected to the Internet of Things, all these apps, all these embedded intelligence systems. But the scary thing is that all this tons of data, which is information about yourself, maybe that you may or may not want people to know about. And of course, revenue opportunity. Of course, now the fact you talk about revenue opportunity, that's why a lot of these people, all these organizations are getting into the Internet of Things. Obviously you get the typical, Cisco and Citrix and all these people are getting into it. Samsung is now getting into it. Intel is getting into it. IBM is getting into it. And if if these people are getting into it and all these revenue opportunities, you got to think that the people with less honest intentions are also looking at it as well. So that's kind of scary. Because unfortunately, no one is really thinking about security, or at least that there's issues with security. This is from, I think this is from an HP report. Average Internet of Things device has 25 security flaws. I read about another report that they took a look at these home security systems, and they said every single one of these home security systems had at least one security flaw. Which, I'm sorry, that's really scary. A home security system has security flaws. that's not what I want to hear. This was also from the HP report that shows them the numbers. This thing about like 90% of devices are collecting personal information from you. I guess we live in this age where everyone goes on freaking Facebook to share everything about themselves that they probably shouldn't. I loved the recent one I read about where a guy got on the internet to discuss these 2 job offers he had, whether he wanted this one or that one, and one of them was withdrawn because the company didn't like what they said about them. Because people don't really think about, maybe you shouldn't go online, to discuss things that, is better to be discussed among your friends at the bar. So I think that's something that we don't think about. This one I liked also. This was from a IEEE article, which I do reference on my website. And they talk about here about the attacks. And that's, like these 3 avenues. The take control, that's become the classic with Internet of Things. People have this thing at DEF CON. Oh, look, I can take control of your smart house. Oh, I can take control of your smart car. And everything else. That's really cool, but, it gets a bit tiring. And then, of course, there's disrupting service, which is the kind of the parallel. But I think a lot of people aren't thinking about that middle one, stealing information. These devices are giving information about you, and for some people, that's much more valuable. We overlook the fact that information about you, not just your credit card information, your personal information, your medical information, that is really, really valuable, and in many cases not being protected. And the Internet of Things is making it worse to a degree. So I thought I'd show you some of these interesting Internet of Things devices, which you may or may not have heard about. This one's kind of funky. This is the Amazon Echo, which you can only get if you're a Prime member. And what it does is it can, stream music and information and so forth. But here's the thing. It's always listening. It's listening to what you're telling it and sending that information back. So it's almost like you've got this, snooper in your house or in your living room listening to you all times. What the heck is it listening to? That's kind of, because it's all based on voice recognition and this sort of stuff. So you kind of wonder, what the heck is it sending up to Amazon? Then there's these things. This popped up real recently. I'll be honest. When these things popped up, I was like, oh, this has got to be a really hilarious April Fool's joke, because it popped up a couple days before April 1st. I'm thinking, this is ridiculous. This is not real. These are these little devices, about yay big, that you stick around your house, and when you run out of these products, you push the button and it places an order to Amazon Prime. And I'm like going, that's ridiculous. You can't be serious, but they're real. And they say that, oh yeah, well they do some stuff like you don't have to worry about someone going like, pushing the button several times. It won't create a whole bunch of extra orders. And at least when the order goes in, it goes to you first to approve it before it gets done. But still, the idea is you're going to have all these things all over your house, hooked to your wireless network to place order for products. So I don't know. This is kind of interesting, is these 2 products. The first one is this GE Link, which is an LED light bulb that is controlled by the Internet of Things. You can see these on TV. I've seen TV ads for this. So you're like sitting in your freaking living room with your smartphone, adjusting your freaking light bulb. Like, you can't get up and go and adjust it. I don't know. And this other thing is interesting too. This is called Wink. And Wink is this new smart home system that links to all kind of different devices. It'll link and make use of GE's light bulbs and these cameras and the Nest thermostat and the Nest smoke detector and all these other devices. And if you want to see Link, go to Home Depot. They have a whole display of all these Link things that you can play around with. So the smartphone, the smart home products has come down to the point where you can go to freaking Home Depot and pick these things up for a couple $100. That's how simple they are. And it's all connected and controlled through your smartphones and this sort of stuff. And yeah, someone has found that there's security problems with this. And there is this thing. And yes, that is what you think it is. It's a vibrator. And there's another one coming out that's controlled by your smartphone. So it's, it's kind of scary, and what's actually kind of funny when I was doing research for this presentation is how many these trade shows and trade fairs on the Internet of Things have popped up just in the last week or so, and a lot of them have been dealing with security. And there was one article that even talked about where one guy was thinking like, maybe we should put the brakes on the Internet of Things until we can go and address the security, which is, I don't know, that came a little bit, overboard. But if you think about it, we have, our laptops and whatnot. Nowadays, most of us are pretty secure with our laptops. We put security products in our laptops themselves, full disk encryption and this sort of stuff. Most of us are pretty secure about when we hook up our laptops to networks. I think most of us here are not going around and going to like wide open Wi-Fi networks and just hooking up and going and browsing the internet and this sort of stuff. We're getting that way now with our smartphones, because let's be honest, our smartphones are computers. So most of us probably have antivirus on our smartphones, being more secure about our smartphones. But you're looking at the Internet of Things and you don't see that. I don't see antivirus on our Internet of Things devices. I don't see anyone talking about encryption by and large. You get these Internet of Things and you're hooking up to the other one without any is that connection encrypted? Are you giving a username and password to authenticate yourself? Like those Amazon Dash, you're just going to hook those up to your home Wi-Fi network. Is there any security there? I don't think so. So those of you who want to get into the Internet of Things, there's a lot of avenues, a lot of neat things that you can get into. One thing I wanted to make sure people have an understanding with is a little bit about the hardware that people are using for Internet of Things. The first is what are called, microcontrollers, which maybe some people may or may not understand what that is. Again, I'm not trying to insult anyone, and I'm not sure what your level of experience with hardware. Most of probably aware of microprocessors. That's what we run in our laptops, our desktops. Most of our servers are run with a microprocessor chip. It's a central processing unit, made as a single chip. There were anything from 8-bit, which is what I used to use when I was a kid, now up to 64-bit processors, very, very common. A microcontroller is what a lot of the Internet of Things are using. I hate to say it, but it's a stripped down, limited microprocessor. It has a CPU on it, and in some cases, these are pretty powerful CPUs. They can be 8-bit up to a 32-bit CPU, maybe dual, maybe quad core, and so forth. But they're limited in terms of memory and storage. That means they can't run a whole operating system. They can run just a small little program, which is what you want. You want it to run a little program to control that device and nothing else. This is what is most of your smart devices and so forth. And here's an example of one. This is the Atmega. This is the heart of the Arduino Uno board. It's got an 8-bit RISC processor, but only has 32K of memory, i.e. storage for a program. So it can do some neat stuff, but it's not going to run an operating system. The other end of the spectrum are these things called a system on a chip, a SoC. And that's where basically it's the opposite of a microcontroller in terms of we actually put more stuff on that single chip. What used to be multiple chips is crammed into one single chip. Sometimes they use something called package on package, which will layer, the CPU and memory and storage and so forth. This is the heart of your smartphones and your tablets. I think every one of you here has a smartphone or a tablet. It's all used. They have SoCs in them. That's what runs them. Here's an example one from Qualcomm. This is what's in my smartphone. It's a little bit dated, but there's more powerful ones. This one's a dual core. There's now probably 8-core SoCs. Okay. So with the Internet of Things, we're dealing with microcontrollers and single board computers. The biggest one with a microcontroller is the Arduino. I think everyone has seen, or at least have heard of the Arduino. If you've never seen one, that's what this thing is. This is an Arduino Uno. This is the basic Arduino, which is actually pretty small. I thought these things were actually bigger when I saw pictures of them. So I was kind of shocked when I actually saw one. I said, like, oh, that's a little bit smaller than I thought. And realized there are actually ones that are smaller than this, probably about a half or a third of this size. But this is the Arduino. The funny thing is, this was created as a tool for more artistic type people, obviously not for security types. It's also open source. The hardware design is open source. The development environment is open source. You can go and buy the official Arduinos from them for, I think, like $20, $30. Or if that's too much, you can go get a cheap Chinese knockoff for $5. That's about the same thing, the same components. Maybe the manufacturing isn't as good, but it's, you know, it's pretty compatible. Arduino is so big that most people are actually making their own Arduino compatible, Arduino-like microcontrollers, and they try to make it as compatible as possible because they know they can make use of the whole environment infrastructure of what's available for Arduino. The Arduino shields, which are the daughter boards. Things like this, which is an Ethernet shield that acts Ethernet capability from Arduino and so forth. There's actually a whole family of Arduino boards. The Uno is like the base model, it's 8-bit. There's other ones that have different ones. You can see across the bottom are pictures of their various different boards. The lower one is the Uno, but you can see like the little tiny ones where the mini and micro and nano, they're much, much smaller. So you're getting things about the size of a postage stamp or a quarter. And you can do some really funky things with some of these based upon the capabilities. And people do. Of course, I said there's shields, add capabilities to it. Ethernet, Wi-Fi. You want to add an SD card to add as storage for Arduino, you can do so. There's sensor controllers and motor controllers to make robots, all kind of fun things. This is an interesting shield here made by SparkFun called the Crypto Shield, and it adds hardware-level encryption to your Arduino project. So it adds the TPM chip. If you're not, the TPM chip is a chip they're now adding into PCs to allow full disk encryption on it, through the operating system. But this one adds all kind of hardware encryption right there into your project, which is pretty neat. And these are some of the security products that have actually been done with the Arduino. I have links to all these on my article. The first one is this door unlocker, those credit card, hotel keys we get nowadays. Well, someone has figured out how to use an Arduino to crack that. Key sweeper, someone basically put into a USB charger a key sniffer that would basically grab wireless keystrokes from a wireless keyboard. You can do access card and RFID card hackers or skimmers. The first HackMiami conference, there was someone who was talking about pen testing, and she had this device that she could basically walk by people that had these, the ID badges you get into their workplace, and was able to skim them and then clone them. This was something interesting, hacking a wireless presenter. I have this little wireless presenter that's controlling my computer with a USB dongle. Well, someone has worked out an Arduino device that basically will hijack the radio signal between these and deliver a payload to the computer through the USB. So that's kind of scary. The lock cracker is one I just found about this past week. Someone figured out how to create a device that would crack or basically unlock a combination padlock. It would basically hook to that padlock and run through all possible combinations to open that padlock. So you're kind of like, okay, I thought my padlocks were secure, but I guess not. Obviously, you can do a network sniffer or a USB security hacker. I'm always thinking you can get like a small little USB type device with an Arduino, plug into someone's USB port, and then you're home free. So these are some of the things you can do that have been done with the Arduino. Single board computers, of course, is the next step up, and they take advantage of those SOCs, this computers on a chip. Basically, the idea is building an entire computer using something about the size of a credit card. All you have to do basically is hook up a keyboard and a monitor, and you're good to go. But to be honest, you don't even need to do that. You can use these as basically a headless mode, and because they're very, very small, you can go and maybe put them someplace and then be able to be on the network and so forth. They can be low power, which means you can run them with batteries. Don't need to bother about plugging them into a wall. And they can run a variety of OSs. If you don't like Windows, you can do Linux, various versions, Android, Chromium. Apparently, Microsoft is claiming that this next version of Windows 10 is there's actually going to be two versions of Windows 10, and one will be for the Internet of Things devices, which means you can run, if you so desire, I don't know why, Windows 10 on these devices. The most well-known is the Raspberry Pi. They were actually developed by a foundation in England as an educational device. It's meant to be a low-cost device to teach kids about computers. So power is not what they were all about. Cost was to be about $25, $35. There's different models. There's different capabilities of those models. And if you've never seen a Raspberry Pi, this is the Raspberry Pi B model, which was the original two they had, the A and B. And you can see they're about the size of a credit card. And it has, all the different connectors you need and so forth. And they've actually gone past it because, the next one is the Raspberry Pi 2, which is this guy, which is exactly the same size, but much more powerful. It's now up to 1 gig of RAM, much more powerful processor. Now it's a quad-core processor. The first one had a single core. So it's a nice little thing. Do a lot of fun stuff with the Raspberry Pi. To add capabilities, they don't have shields. They call them, in the old days, plates. Now they're called HAT. They're just daughter boards that add to the capability of the Raspberry Pi. The other one that's really, really, really popular is the BeagleBone. And it's actually formed by a group called the Beagle Board, which is actually backed by TI. So they use TI's SoC. They've actually had multiple models. That's one of the older boards they had. But the one that people know about is the BeagleBone Black, which is this guy here, which is actually the same size physically as a Raspberry Pi. A little bit more powerful, a little bit more costly. As you can see, it uses an ARM processor. They actually, unlike the Raspberry Pi, actually build in the Debian Linux, but you can change that if you so desire. They have daughter boards. I mentioned the Crypto Shield. They actually have also created a crypto cape for the BeagleBone Black. So pretty much anything you can do with a BeagleBone, you can do with a Raspberry Pi, or with many, many, many other single board computers. There's a whole range of them. Because people go like, oh, hey, I can create something different and whatnot. Some try to be compatible, some don't. But most of them range, at least under $100. So the different type of product you can do with it. You can do a Tor box, Onion router, if you're familiar with what that is. Obviously, is a pen testing platform. Out on the table, they have flyers from a company called Pony Express. What they do is they make these little pen testing boxes, and basically you can create your own by just basically going and getting a Raspberry Pi or BeagleBone Black, one of these boards, adding Kali Linux. They have versions of Kali Linux for the Raspberry Pi and the BeagleBone Black that you can install in these, and you can make that your own pen testing platform. You can do obviously the network skimmer and sniffer and so forth. This is the Onion Pi. There's instructions on how to create this yourself very, very inexpensively with the Raspberry Pi. Very easy thing to do. This is something I just learned about recently. This is kind of cool. This is going to be they're claiming it's going to be a $9 single board computer. They already have a Kickstarter campaign. If you want to get involved with it, you've got, I think, 20 more days to go. Funny thing was, they only needed $50,000 to do this campaign. When I learned about the product earlier this past week, they were at $500,000. As of a couple of days ago, they're now at $1.2 million in terms of funding. So you can see the size of the card is pretty small. That's actually, it may be hard to see, that's actually a battery pack underneath it that they will provide, that will plug into the board itself, so you can use that instead of power. It's a 1 gigahertz sock in it, 4 gigs of RAM. It actually has Wi-Fi and Bluetooth on the card. That's actually something that the BeagleBone Black and the Raspberry Pi do not have, is Wi-Fi or Bluetooth on card. Now, unfortunately for VGA and HDMI, you need to have a daughter board, which they will provide, because all they have is composite video out. And that funky thing down at the bottom there is this, like a handheld computer device that chip will actually plug into. I think that one is about $50. The chip is $9, but if you go to the campaign, you can have several different options of what you'd like to put forth. It's not out yet. I think it's going to come out first half of next year. So something to look at if you're interested. Now, one thing that's kind of interesting is most of the stuff I talk about on the Internet of Things devices have all been based upon the AVR core or ARM processors. And the funny thing is Intel rules the chip world when it comes to like your laptops and your servers and your desktop. But when it comes to Internet of Things, they're like Johnny-come-lately. And so they've made a very concerted effort to get themselves into that realm, because if you read some of the stuff you hear about, that, sales of PCs are going down, and sales of smartphones and tablets are going up, and most smartphones and tablets don't use Intel processors. So they're kind of concerned that, hey, if they don't get themselves into the Internet of Things, they may not have a future. So they made a concerted effort to get into this world and create some of these different boards and so forth. Some of the ones I talk about are up here. Something called a Minnow board. If you want to go and search that, I call that their version of a Beagle board. There's also something called the Intel Galileo, which is kind of like their version of Arduino. What I think is more interesting is the Edison and the Curie. This is the Edison, and it is this thing here. It's about the size of a That's the Edison. This is a Pentium class SoC with Wi-Fi and Bluetooth built onto it. It runs Yocto, which is an embedded version of Linux. However, I did see an article somebody that showed you how you can replace it with Debian if you wanted to do so. And it's meant to be for wearable computing, but hey, you can do this for anything. SparkFun, which is a company, actually created a whole array of boards to add capability to this. These are some of those boards here, including a battery pack, so that you can have this battery powered. There's actually one of the boards which will have an SD board, so you can plug in like an SD card that's like save stuff. So the thing is, since this thing is, since the thing has Wi-Fi, you can hook these things up with a battery pack, have it programmed as your network sniffer, and they're so tiny, they're like a third the size of like a Raspberry Pi or BlackBerry, and then just drop it wherever you want, and sniff the network. The board is about $50, but I'm sure over time it'll come down. So this is kind of neat. This would be some interesting things that people could do some stuff with. This is the next one I just heard about, called the Curie. And if it's not clear, that thing's about the size of a dime. It's apparently got a 32-bit SoC. Not a whole lot of memory, as you can see. It's meant to be in for wearable computing, about the size of a button, using Bluetooth low energy. And it's going to come out in the second half of this year. I don't know what the cost is going to be. They talk about how it's also going to make use of this real-time OS. Sorry, I'm not meant to be vague. That's all they pretty much tell me on the literature they have. I'm like, what do you mean real time? Is the operating system on that thing, or is it part of the development environment? I'm sorry, I don't know, because that's all I can go by is from what I've read. But this sounds really interesting. What I kind of think about things, what I think is neat about things like this is could you create something like this that you would be wearing that'd be much more unseen, to maybe to go around and maybe like, hey, spoof badge access to and buildings and this sort of stuff, or go walk past people who have smartphones or badges and kind of like grab information and this sort of stuff. That's something that someone could probably do because these are so small and so unobtrusive, and I'm sure someone's thinking about this. It can't just be me. So these are some of the funky things that are out there that you can probably play around with and do some interesting things. It's all a matter about your imagination. So, there are some, like I said, there are some efforts going on to do IoT security, and I wanted to tell you guys about a few of the ones I've come across. OWASP, which I think most of you probably have heard of, they now have an IoT Top 10 project. These are the top 10 issues they see in IoT security. Most of them are pretty straightforward. You know, things such as, you know, the encryption of the interface and so forth, poor physical security, and some of our insecure software firmware. I mean, that's one thing that's kind of scary is that, you know, you flash one of these devices, what prevents someone else from coming along and flashing their own information on it? You know, there's not. I mean, the BeagleBone Black, like I said, this has, you know, Debian on the memory. I can flash, you know, I can update that, or I can put something else on it. If I can do that, what's to stop someone else from doing the same thing? With the Raspberry Pi, it's a matter of, you know, you plug in a new SD card. Okay, again, if I can plug in a new SD card with a new operating system or whatever, what's to stop someone else doing the same thing? Privacy concerns, again, I think it's something that's an effort that a lot of people are just oblivious about. I guess if you're part of this generation that, you know, has no problem going onto Facebook to tell us what freaking stupid things you did, you know, somehow the idea maybe that's not a good idea doesn't penetrate some people. It's just a sad factor. So this is what they're working on. SANS actually did a summit a couple of years ago on securing the Internet of Things. I was a bit disappointed that they didn't like put out a final report, you know, a full thing about, hey, here's what the talks were and here's all this sort of stuff. They did kind of a survey and that was about it. I was kind of disappointed by that because I would have liked to seen that. The Federal Trade Commission, you know, scary if you will, also did a workshop shortly thereafter on it, and they just recently released a report that you can go get. What I thought was at least thankful is they said they don't need, at this time, we don't need any IoT-specific regulations. It's like, yeah, I don't want, they're really smart enough to be like, this is a lot of potential, let's not regulate right now because that's just going to kill the golden calf. So it's like, okay, thankfully they didn't do that. So, but if you're interested, you can go and get the report as well as some statements from these two people. This I think is kind of interesting. This is something, a academic project between Stanford, UC Berkeley, and Michigan called the Secure Internet of Things Project. You can go to their website. It's very, very recently they started this. Apparently they do like a weekly seminar. This past winter they did that, and they had a workshop last August. So this is kind of interesting in terms of maybe what's coming out from the academic world on IoT security. So kind of interesting. I definitely wanted to give you guys a lot of resources that if you want to get into this, that you can go to. Obviously, the DIY, the maker, the hacker community is a good place to start. There are actually local maker spaces, hacker spaces. Obviously, HackMiami is a hacker group, but it's not really a hacker space, i.e. a place to go to have tools and resources to work on. These are the three I was able to find that, as far as I know, are still in existence in our area. There was another one, which I think is gone. At least I couldn't find any information that they're still active. They have a maker fair, which they had last November, and I think they might be doing it again this year. I'm not certain. I was looking on Facebook, and some of the things I saw kind of gave me that impression, but I'm not going to swear to it. Obviously, there's also Make Magazine, if you're familiar with that. This magazine from O'Reilly, which is kind of good. Realize it's not just, single board computers and Arduino and stuff like that. So it's just be aware. Suppliers, Maker Shed, Adafruit Industries, SparkFun. Adafruit and SparkFun actually make a lot of their own stuff. and sell all their own stuff. And what's really great about their sites is they're really big on education. You want to learn about how these do these things, you want to get tutorials, they have a ton of stuff. You know, they have videos that'll show you how to do this sort of stuff. Really great stuff. I mean, a lot of the stuff I have here is from these people. Like I said, SparkFun actually is the one that makes these things for the Edison. This case that I have for my BeagleBone actually came from Adafruit. So there are a really good resource of stuff. Magazines, there's these various, they're referred to as MAGA books. That's these big, thick magazines that are kind of pricey, more of introductory type stuff, but they might be pretty good. There's also the Raspberry Pi Geek, which has been going on. This is issue 10, which is a pretty good resource. What's nice about this one is that it's not strictly Raspberry Pi. They'll talk about Arduino, they'll talk about the other single board computers, and so forth. And most of the things that you can do, in fact, this one's kind of neat because what's on the front cover is a name tag or name badge that uses an Arduino to drive an LCD display. So that's some of the things that you can, neat things you can do in Arduino. Then there's the Magpie magazine. I've not seen that one. That's actually now an official Raspberry Pi magazine. I'm kind of old school. I like books. I love O'Reilly books. I used to use them a lot when I was a Unix admin. They have a whole bunch of getting started books on a variety of things, Raspberry Pi, BeagleBone. Again, these are kind of introductory type books. You may find them really, really useful. You might think them as, oh, well, that's too introductory. That's just the way it is. All these books are actually listed on my article. There's more from Maker and O'Reilly. The first one I think is going to be interesting. It's not come out yet, but I'm kind of interested about that. The other ones are kind of cookbooks, kind of like lots of ideas and information. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. Pacted is a publisher. I've been seeing lots of more books recently, and they have some of these are their books, and the rest are from Singris. But you can see right there, hacking and pen testing with low power devices. That's what to mean talking about using a Raspberry Pi or BeagleBone Black, using Kali Linux and making it as a pen testing device. The two secret agent books, I don't have them, but I looked at their table of contents. And in just my looking at the table of contents, the BeagleBone one looks really, really cool. They even had a whole chapter about the crypto cape. The Raspberry Pi one, I was a little disappointed in. So that was just based upon looking at the table of contents. If you want to know more about Yocto, I've not seen these two books, but the bottom two are about Yocto. So if you want to get more into that, that might be a good resource. So kind of like my kind of conclusions and my views. Everyone seems to be doing this sort of thing like, hey, look at this, I can take over your IoT device, I can take over your smartphone, I can take over your smart home, and blah, 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 blah. Really neat, but at another level, I get kind of jaded, as in like, yeah, we kind of know that's going to happen because these aren't secure. Please take it the next step. That's why I said I'd like to see people showing ways, okay, yeah, you can crack these things, you can break them, you can take over them. Let's spend more time how we can secure them. Actually, that's what I kind of like about the Crypto Shield, the Crypto Cape boards. That's showing the way, hey, here we've created something to help secure the Internet of Things. Let's see how that can happen. That's what I think is more important. Do we need to have encryption? We talk about full disk encryption on our laptops. Do we need to be talking about full disk encryption on these, Internet of Things devices? Should we be adding these TCP chips and whatnot to add to enable encryption at that level or not? I kind of wonder about IoT malware. I mean, we have malware on our phones. Do we need to be worrying about malware on the Internet of Things devices? Can, my Amazon Dash get infected with a virus or not? Is that possible? And if that's the case, what can we do to prevent that? Do we need to worry about network security? One thing I saw about was, everyone does these things where they put them on their home network. Should people be thinking about having segregated subnets at home? Here's my subnet at home for, my laptops. Oh, and I have a guest network for when, cousin Vinny comes over and wants to get on my network. I don't want him on my personal network. And oh, hey, I got the separate subnet just for my Internet of Things. That may sound weird, but why not? I mean, a lot of companies, when you go there, they, one of our clients that I'm dealing with, they're actually talking about having 4 different Wi-Fi subnets. Where I used to work, we had 2. I mean, for the internal employees, then we had for the guests. Should people be thinking about that for their home Wi-Fi? Is that a good idea or is that a bad idea? I don't know. That's something that I'd like to see people start thinking about and showing that's reasonable. That's what we need to do. Do we need to worry about firewalls on these devices and so forth? So, at this point, anyone have any questions or any comments? Yes. I'll see about with the HackMiami people. Like I said, that's why I did my article or my posting on my blog, which will have all the resources I talk about, all the articles I talked about or didn't talk about, the reports I came across. I list all the books. I list all the resources. All those are going to be there. It actually should go live this afternoon. That way, that's why I didn't have any URLs in this and this sort of stuff. I thought I'd make it easy for you guys, so not to go and scribbling down, like, what does he talk about there? And it has a lot of extra things I didn't have a chance to really touch upon. Some of the other devices, the Teen C, which is an Arduino-like device, and some of the others. So so I try to put everything all there to make that a lot easier.
What's your website? It's on your website. I'm seeing the blog.
Yeah, it's on my blog. michaelonsecurity.blogspot.com. michaelonsecurity.blogspot. Yeah, right there. And all those pictures and whatnot that I had in there, I'll be honest, I just grabbed them off of Google. I go to Google Image and search on Internet Things, and they're like, ooh, I like that one. Ooh, I like that one. So I didn't create those. I think the more security one, actually, I pulled out of an HP one. And the HP report is actually on, I list that on my article. That's what I found about a half a dozen different reports, those kind of Internet of Things related. There was one report, I think I listed it there, where they did a research on all these Internet of Things devices and actually were very specific about, oh, Wink, it has this problem. Oh, this one has this problem. And they actually were very clear about, hey, these, so it's very like, oh yeah, we studied all these devices, had a lot of problems. They actually went and they actually said the actual products and what the problems were. Any other questions? Yes? No, I have not. Yeah. Mm. Yeah. There's a lot of things out there, and it's kind of hard to, even actually kind of hard to find some of these things, because I would go and do like Internet of Things security, and I'd get home security systems. I'm like, no, I want, things that people use to like break security or do security. So sometimes it was kind of hard to go through and kind of search and find these things. I would do like, Arduino security, and I get like, oh, how to build an Arduino-based home security system. Yeah, that's not what I want. Yeah. So. Yeah, some of these things it was kind of surprising what I found, like doorknobs and whatnot, and door locks. They now have these door locks that have keypads on them, which is like, okay, that's neat. But now they've done the step that those are now networked. So it's like, okay, great. So I had this door lock on my front door that's connected to the Internet of Things, and I'm like thinking, so does that mean someone can take over the Internet thing, my home network and unlock my freaking door, or unlock my garage door? That kind of scares me. So because I said, they looked at all these home security systems, and every one of them had at least one security problem. So you almost have, that was just like, I went to the Wink site, was looking at all the other things that they connect to, and I'm like, oh, Schrader, they have these internet connected doors and door locks. Okay, I'm scared about that. I'm scared about these things about the medical devices, because A lot of them are going to have health issues where we're going to have some like a medical pump that's going to be pumping in drugs, and now we have to worry about people going to hack those and kill us with it. That was actually a plot of a Law and Order episode like 10 years ago. You know, some kid hacked into a hospital system and was screwing around with the medical devices and killed people by giving them the wrong amounts of drugs. You know, that scared me. Oh, and there was always the story which is true, that Joe Biden had a pacemaker put in that was controlled by Wi-Fi, and they turned that off to prevent anyone from hacking his pacemaker. So, anyone else? Okay, thank you for your time.